What's up, guys? I'm your host, Jacob Nestor, and we are in the closet. Welcome. This is the intro podcast. Episode 1 will technically be starting next week, but I just wanted to do this first intro episode so you guys can get to know me, the host, a little bit more. We are going to go through my top 10 movies of all time. Now, disclaimer, a lot of these movies, so difficult to pick this list. I mean, there's movies that I think are honestly better than these movies, and I mean, I don't know, there's a lot to it, but these 10 movies all have really specific personal meaning to me, and I'll be kind of going into that theme a lot on each of these about why they individually mean so much to me. So, without further ado, here we go. At number 10, I gotta go with The Social Network by David Fincher. This movie is insane. I believe it is the best movie of the decade, even though I have it number 10 right here. It is the best movie of the decade, not only in how unique and innovative it is. I mean, a movie about Facebook, but it is the most intense, fast-paced, engaging movie of the decade. Alongside that, it has some really strong themes that really help set up and define this whole decade as we know it. It came out at the very beginning, but it has still just grown in meaning in so many different ways. It's such an intense, great movie, and it really was my first introduction into Sorkin, who's one of the best writers alive right now, and his writing style is definitely one of the most influential and copied in today's writing styles in most movies, and so I think it easily deserves a spot on my top 10. And also, most of my conscious life, I'm 20 years old, has been in the 2010s, and I gotta have it. Anyway, moving on. Number 9 is La La Land by Damien Chazelle. This movie, so jazz is a really big part of my life personally. Movies are one of my favorite things, and jazz is my favorite music genre for sure. It always has been. It's had a major impact on my life. I've played jazz for a really long time. I listen to jazz all the time, and this was the first time I'd ever seen music, and specifically jazz, so perfectly woven and mixed in with a film and filmmaking styles. It doesn't delve too deep into the pure musical, but it also definitely has those very musical elements. Obviously, it opens up with a big musical number and does have quite a few more throughout, but it stays very grounded in filmmaking and standard plot and everything, which kind of blew my mind when I first saw it. And I've seen the major influences that influenced the movie, Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and perfect movie, I love it, and other stuff has been done like it, perhaps, but to me, this was the first time I'd seen it, and it was also my introduction into Damien Chazelle, who I believe is one of the best filmmakers alive right now, with La La Land, Whiplash, and First Man, which I think are all just as good as each other, all perfect, amazing movies that I love so much. Maybe I'll go into it, specifically a Damien Chazelle episode sometime. But yeah, I just love this movie, and the really specific personal thing for this is it really introduced me to the idea about the sacrifices that people have to make to truly be happy. And I know that's not just the only theme from the movie, and maybe that's only what I got out of it, but that was one of the first times I really thought about that idea, and that really had a big impact on my life for sure. And yeah, I love La La Land for sure. Next up, number 8, Blade Runner 2049 by Denis Villeneuve. Man, speaking of best directors of the decade, Denis Villeneuve is easily in the top 3 of the 2010s. He came out with Sicario, Prisoners, Arrival, Enemy, Blade Runner 2049. He's got Dune coming up. He's amazing. He's on a hot streak. He never misses, and Blade Runner 2049 is just like it. I've always been a fan of the original Blade Runner. It's one of my dad's favorite movies. He made me watch it growing up. It took me a while to like it, but I did grow to love it throughout the years, and it's always been one of my favorites. Obviously, it's a very revolutionary movie, and I loved it. But Blade Runner 2049, man, it really takes all those great aspects from the original of the revolutionary visual effects, storytelling, and some of the really important themes that it dives into. It takes all those great aspects from the original and builds on every single one of them in every way, which is just insane with how much of a incredible movie the original is, and the fact that they were able to build on top of everything while staying true to the original ideal and like kind of feelings is amazing. It's easily one of the best sequels of all time, probably the best. And also I had to include on the list because it has my favorite theater experience of all time. First time I saw it was in a regular Regal in my town. It was great. I loved it. Whatever. But after probably like 5 months, it was out of theaters, but it was playing at the OMSI Empirical Theater in Portland. Not many of you probably know about it, but it's like a basically larger than IMAX theater with an insanely great sound system, and they play all types of movies there. And so I went and saw it there, and that movie on that screen with that sound system on that specific night, really late at night, of very few other people in there. It was like all empty besides us. It was just one of the best experiences I've had in a theater with one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'll never forget it for sure. Next up is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse by Rodney Rothman, Peter Ramsey, and Bob Persichetti. I think I pronounced that wrong, but that's okay. This movie fucking rocks! I am a massive MCU and comic book fan. I always have been my whole life, alongside DC Comics as well, but regardless, I've always been a massive comic book fan. Spider-Man is one of my favorite heroes of all time. I've always watched every single MCU movie. I love them despite their flaws. They've always been my favorites. Spider-Man 2 doesn't have flaws. That movie's amazing. But I love all that great superhero movies. But nothing does it like Into the Spider-Verse. I mean, this movie changes everything. It has not only completely revolutionized the animation industry as we know it, but also superhero films as you know it, and comic book movies. The way that it's able to integrate comic book style into filmmaking. It's been done before, obviously, but it's in such a new, interesting, engaging way in this movie. Everything hits. The emotions always manage to make me cry. They always hit. The comedy always hits. The action is the best. And I mean, it is by far the best example of any superhero movie. One of the best animated movies I've ever seen. Completely new, revolutionary in all those ways, and amazing. And hey, like I said, I just love Spidey. And I mean, this is the best Spidey movie. Sorry, Spider-Man 2, I love you, but this movie is way too fucking good. And I mean, I hope the sequel lives up to it, you know? This movie's awesome. Moving on, it's Inside Llewyn Davis by the Coen brothers. Now, this movie, this might sound weird, but hear me out. This movie, when I watched it, I had such a warm, comforting feeling when it was done. And it's such a depressing movie for sure. Especially the way it ends. It is incredibly depressing, I'd say. But something about this movie just really felt comforting, and the relatability of the character. It just felt so personal and relatable, like I was saying, to me specifically, and watching that alongside these great filmmaking techniques that the Coen brothers used to make this really cold environment, and the music. You get to hear every single song all the way through, which I always love, and the music is spot on. It is so well made, so well done, and it's easily my favorite of Coen brother movies. You know, I've seen all their movies now. They're one of my favorite directors of all time, and I think it's easily their best. And also, this introduced me, a theme that's going to be recurring in this list now on, is introducing me to great subgenres that are some of my favorite styles of movies of all time. And this one specifically, not to try and spoil anything, but subgenres of movies where the main character ends the movie in the same spot, whether it's thematically or literally. They end sort of in the same spot in a way. And this is the best example of that type of movie, and it's very kind of depressing style of filmmaking, but it's something that's really relatable for me personally that I really enjoy to watch, and I just think it's a great movie. I love it so much. I've seen it so many times. Next up, another best of one of my favorite directors, Taxi Driver by Martin Scorsese. Now, actually, let me preface this by saying King of Comedy might be better. I love the King of Comedy, but I've only seen it once. I just haven't had a chance to rewatch it. But I've seen Taxi Driver. I watched it first when I was probably 12, and I've seen it throughout the years so many times, probably 10 times now, by myself, with friends. I don't know why something about this movie is just so rewatchable for me. It is easily the best depiction of New York to date, I believe. It's so dirty and gross and interesting. Um, and the music, that fucking score that keeps on playing is so good. And it's just such a dark movie, but it's so deeply engaging and personal that makes it so relatable and interesting to watch over and over again, I believe. And I also think it's probably the best or ultimate anti-hero movie. Another subgenre that I love of anti-hero movies, of an incredibly dislikable main character, but the movie forces you to relate and actually care about him. And not saying I care about Travis too much in this movie. He's definitely a fucked up guy, but the movie, that's why it's so good. It kind of does make you care about him and relate to him. And I think this is one of the best examples of that type of filmmaking, and I just love this movie to death for sure. Next up is Call Me By Your Name by Luca Guadagnino. Now, this movie has lots of controversy at times, debate, discussion over it. I don't give a shit. This movie means so much to me personally. Um, Obviously, so I am a bisexual man, and that is kind of one of the main reasons for the play of words in the name of this podcast. In the closet, I'm obviously recording this in my closet, and I was in the closet for a really long time. Now I'm out, but I'm back in here to record the podcast. But yeah, it was something I was really ashamed of and wouldn't admit for a really long time. Only told very few people. And something about this movie, alongside other stuff that was happening at my life during the time when this movie was released, something just really clicked in me with it, and it really made me start to feel comfortable and accept who I was, and start to tell people like my parents and friends and others. And yeah, this movie just means so much to me in that aspect. And obviously, I fucking love Timothée Chalamet. Massive crush on him. Hit me up, Shimmy. Hit me up, Timmy. Fucking Armie Hammer. This is his second movie on this list. He's in The Social Network. Great as the twins in that movie. I love him. And this movie really just means so much to me personally, and will always hold such a special place in my heart. Alright, we're in the top 3 now. Again, they're in no order, but for the matter of debate, they kind of are. Close Up by Abbas Kiarostami. This movie is by Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami. Came out in 1990, and this movie is one of the most unique, interesting, crazy stories of all time, for sure. This movie shows the way that this movie is able to look at a man's relationship to art, specifically filmmaking, but art in general, but man's personal relationship, and in this case, very specifically personal relationship to art, while still having such a universal meaning and being able to connect to so many people, even though it's such a specific, just crazy story that you have to watch. I don't want to go too much into it, but it's just really an insane story, and it introduced me again to one of my favorite type of subgenres, where it's when a movie incorporates documentary filmmaking mixed with fictional scenes. That's surprisingly a very big subgenre, and I think this is the best example of it for sure. It just you just need to watch this movie. Like I said, I don't want to go too much into the plot or anything that happens in it. You just have to watch it and then look up the story about how it was made too. And it's just the craziest thing ever. And I don't know how you could not cry at the end of this thing. And it's just so good, especially if you especially if you care about movies and you're passionate like I am. This is a must-watch movie, absolutely. All right, and the next two, they're pretty similar in a lot of ways, but I had to choose for number two. I went with Scott Pilgrim versus the World by Edgar Wright. This movie, I've probably seen this movie over 50 times at least. I mean, this movie is one of the most rewatchable movies of all time. It's so funny and so engaging, and so just everything is so visually and sonically pleasing. And the way that it mixes, again, comic book filmmaking like it does in Into the Spider-Verse, but alongside that, but video game filmmaking, it is easily the best incorporation of video games and video game style into filmmaking, alongside mixing in comic book style with that amalgamation right there of comics, filmmaking and video games make for just such an interesting movie. And it's based off one of my favorite comic book series of all time, obviously Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. As I've said, I'm a large comic book fan, and this movie is just one of the best examples of those types. I mean, this movie, it's just so good, and the way that I've been able to appreciate it differently throughout the years of just sort of like a fun, engaging music video game movie as a kid, and then start to more deeply relate to the actual characters in the movie as I get older, has become, it's been a really interesting time, and this movie never is not fun and awesome to watch. And yeah, man, it's always the best. It's always the best. I actually cosplayed as Scott Pilgrim for a Rose City Comic Con once. I think I was 13. Awesome stuff. It was cute. It was fun. Movie will always hold such a special place in my heart alongside the comic book series, of course. Now, number one. If you know me, you know what this is already. It's Moonrise Kingdom by Wes Anderson. This is the best Wes Anderson movie that he has made. He is my favorite filmmaker alive, of course. Favorite filmmaker ever, for sure. He never misses for me. First movie I saw of his was Fantastic Mr. Fox. And then I saw this when I was probably 13, and by this point I've seen all of his movies and I love every single one of them, but something about Moonrise Kingdom has always just stuck with me so much. First of all, I think it's just the best example of his specific style. If you know Wes Anderson, you know his style. It's very specific and interesting and honest, and I think a lot of people will say Grand Budapest, but I do think his style is best demonstrated and utilized and perfected in Moonrise Kingdom right here. In every aspect, it's just such a beautiful, funny, engaging movie. It's so great throughout. Visually, it's amazing. The production design is just next level. I mean, and the way that I not only related so heavily to obviously the main kids when it first came out, I was their age when it came out. That was such a special meaning to me. And the way that I've continued to relate and evolve with those characters throughout the years, and also all the side characters, the family, the police officer, the scouts, the scoutmaster, everybody. The way that I've been able to understand them more throughout the years as well has just been an absolute ride. This movie is endlessly rewatchable. It's one of my favorites of all time. I can't say enough about it. This is just my favorite movie of all time, and that's it. That's the list, baby. That's my personal top 10. Man, I mean, that was a hard list to pick, for sure. There's a lot of picks. I'm wearing my Rocky shirt right now. Rocky could be in it. I got my Dunkirk poster right here. Dunkirk could honestly be on it. Dunkirk, which I think is Christopher Nolan's best movie. Maybe that's a discussion for another day. Hot pick. Muno and the Dying Girl, another one of my favorites. Pan's Labyrinth, probably my favorite from one of my favorite directors, Guillermo del Toro. But like I said, had to narrow it down to 10. That was them. I'll run through it one more time. Moonrise Kingdom, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Close Up, Call Me by Your Name, Taxi Driver, Inside Llewyn Davis, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Blade Runner 2049, La La Land, and The Social Network. That's my list. You can follow me on Letterboxd, Twitter, or Instagram at Jacob Nestor 568. Feel free to share this podcast. Please like it if you like it. Come back next week where episode 1 will officially be starting with Palm Springs. That'll be hype. Every week there will be random guests. It'll just be random friends of mine. Every week at the end of the episode, I'll announce the movie for the next week, and if any of you see it, let me know if you want to be on the podcast, and feel free, you can. Just let me know. And that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week.